Okay, so we are live and just waiting for a few people to get in touch with us and join in on this exciting conversation we're having this evening. So we'll start in a bit. So we'll start in a bit. Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this edition. Tonight, we're going to have a really exciting chat. The topics that we're talking about tonight are things that I am really passionate about, and I'm so thrilled to be talking to another doctor who shares in these passions. So tonight I'm going to be talking about Behind the Frontline, which is a new documentary that is going to be released soon. And we are so lucky to have his executive producer with us, and that is Dr. Adil Khan. Thank you so much for joining us and making the time to chat with us tonight.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. So, Adil, before we get into the documentary and all of that, just hear about the lives of doctors. There's so many things, or so many paths that we can take in medicine. And you on your own journey and on your own path, and then having found time to do this documentary is amazing. But will you take some time to just introduce yourselves to our viewers and tell us a little bit about your journey through medicine?
Sure. Again, pleasure to be here and to share this platform with you, whom I know now a little bit about, and know that we share many common interests and feel quite strongly about similar interests as well. So great opportunity. Thanks for the introduction. My name is Adil. I'm a medical doctor. I have a little 1.5-year-old and a beautiful wife who I'm giving a shout out to. And I graduated in 2014, at the end of 2014. So I did my internship for 2 years and then ComServe as well afterwards. And I mean, during that time, you have these lived experiences of many of the issues that we face that we highlight in the documentary. Issues of discrimination, bullying, of mental health issues, of tough working conditions. And I felt that at the time, during my period of clinical training, I didn't really have time to reflect on it. Didn't really have time to do anything about it, quite frankly, because you're on call 6-7 times a month, post call, and then what little time you have, you're spending with family and friends, little free time that is. So when I finished my ComServe, I stepped out of the clinical space. I did 1.5 years of MO work with a research center, which was a fantastic experience, gained a lot of insights into how research was conducted. And at the same time, I enrolled part-time to a master's in public health course, which has been a real eye-opener for the world out there beyond the clinical aspects of medicine. And it kind of really opens your mind to new ideas, especially around social justice and the interplay between health and the social determinants of health. And I've moved on, still not in the clinical space at the moment. I'm working as an advisor in the insurance industry, hoping to complete my master's, fingers crossed, at the end of this year. But I mean, I'm still very much with that thought about the social determinants of health and the broader impact of of society on health, rather than, just the kind of physiological things that go wrong to cause ill health. And that's really been my journey so far, and it's part of the reason. It's one of the catalysts that led me to making this documentary, and I'm sure we'll unpack it in the film. Is that we think of these issues of a toxic work environment as being a social determinant of health, and we are quite passionate about it in the sense that there's broader social impact outside of the direct impact there are to the medical doctor or the healthcare professional themselves.
Thanks for that. It is always so interesting for me to be talking to doctors who have ventured out into public health, because I know few to come by. So it's interesting that all of us are kind of, you finish med school, going to the internship, ComServe, and then you kind of on the hamster wheel of, okay, now I have to specialize. Okay, now I have to move on to the next thing. Whereas you took a step back, and as you said, you reflected a bit, which is so important, because it does impact how the level of care we give to our patients, and then that impacting a healthcare system at large. So we need lots more people like you out there. And I think we appreciate your outlook on health and kind of making us question our norms and what have become norms over many generations, actually.
Well, I'm hoping to convince you to do as well, so we'll see where that conversation leads at some stage.
I'm going to need quite a bit of convincing, but we'll see how that goes. Yeah, so I understand a little bit about why you did this documentary, but what do you think was really the driving force for you doing this docu?
Stories. People sharing stories. I would be much the same like you, ComServe, internship, tired, exhausted, feeling that nobody really cares about the environment in which I come from, and sitting at the hospital cafe, or even sometimes when you socialize, us doctors, we only have doctor friends, so that's what we socialize with. And you just complain, and that's all that you do. You just vent, and it is therapeutic, so I'm not dismissing that at all. But the point that I'm making is that you come across all these issues, and you hear about issues of abuse and mistreatment and harassment, and sometimes it's overt, most of the times it's subtle, and you realize, well, we're not alone. As soon as you hear stories from other people and you connect with them on a personal level, you can at least empathize with them on a personal level. It vindicates, validates that person's struggles. And that was the catalyst, really, is that you just over the complaints, and you want to do something about it, and you want to collect these stories so that other people more broadly can also be vindicated and validated. That was the catalyst. And initially when I started, I didn't have a clear intention of what I wanted to do necessarily. Didn't know that it would end up with a documentary. I put a call out for healthcare workers across the country. I didn't actually restrict it to medical doctors per se, but obviously in my network, that's were the people that mostly responded. And I got 60 plus responses from the width and breadth of the profession. Interns, students, but then also consultants, HODs, registrars in training, academics, nursing staff, allied health, paramedics. And the themes were quite clear. And those are the 4 themes that we tackle. It's working conditions, discrimination, bullying, and mental health. And some really atrocious kind of behavior perpetuated against some of the people. I mean, some of the instances was gross harassment or gross sexual abuse, which was shocking to see. but not unbelievable, which can be argued that that's even more shocking. And with some mentorship and guidance, it filtered down into the documentary. I've always had a passion for filmmaking, and it kind of naturally just led that way. And with time, I realized that the way to go is not necessarily to share the nitty-gritty, juicy bits of the stories, although some people would actually prefer it that way, to be honest. But I felt that that's not where the real value is, because if we're going to go on like a expose, third degree, undercover recording type of buzz, we're just going to come across a lot of resistance from the people we want to bring about systemic change, right? It will be us and them. And I didn't think that was worth any value. I thought the real value was to have a mature conversation about these issues. And that's why I opted, as you will see in the documentary eventually, and I know that you have watched it, that there's no personal identifiers. So you don't know which hospital the anecdotes are from. You don't know which professors, HODs, people involved. You don't know the time or the date. But what you do know is enough to connect with the people. And then we talk around the issues, the four issues that I mentioned.
So you've said quite a lot, and I just want to break down a few of those things. Firstly, yes, I have had a sneak peek to this documentary, so thank you for that. And I can honestly say that it is so important for people like you to do these kind of documentaries, to start these movements, because it was great to watch, but it touched on these issues that a lot of us forget. So you deal with it during med school, and it's just, oh, well, your seniors had to deal with it. So, and they made it through, they seem kind of happy now. And you kind of go through internship, ComServe, and then afterwards you kind of have a little more leeway in terms of what you're going to do with your career. And you almost feel that I'd rather focus my energy elsewhere. Forget about what you have been through. But actually, those junior years, I think, mold you a lot. And if we can stop it there, or intervene, or get the conversation going, I think there will be a great change in medicine, and really good medicine will come out of it. It's strange to me that we all get into medicine for whatever reason, but one common reason that we all share is that we want to help other people. And then we get into a field where we ourselves are facing discrimination, bullying, your themes that you mentioned. And it is so sad, because we lose that essence of why we got into medicine. It changes us, and you come out jaded in this system, and it changes your outlook on everything. And imagine if we had doctors who were happier and felt that they could really make an impact. They could approach their consultants with ideas that they have. There was more emphasis on knowledge sharing. I think we would really reach new heights with it all. If we can, I know you said a lot of it is shared experiences and the stories, and we do end up speaking to our friends about it, and you kind of think, oh, okay, we're in the same rotation. Yeah, we have a similar experience. But when you start speaking to 60 odd different people from different spheres in medicine, it becomes more apparent how we share. It's almost we now in solidarity, but not in a good way. We are all oppressed in one way or another, and suffering in one form or another, and to some degree. So your documentary, I can imagine, must have been quite challenging to put together, not only in terms of time and filming and getting people to be involved, but it must have been almost a cathartic experience for you. I'm sure you had some shocking or found that it was still shocking that things are still going on after you left med school.
Yeah.
Not that it's a very long time ago, but um, those kind of things. So, what was that experience for you like, from maybe personally to practically? Yeah, or what was it like?
Of putting together the documentary.
Yes, yeah.
Challenging. It was challenging, and it's probably why it's taken 3 years now to to get where we are. And for all those reasons that you mentioned, the work-life balance. I started studying, I had a son in between as well, COVID, all these things you have to juggle. And the most challenging, I would say, would be to get your foot in the door to have this conversation with the right people. And I'll expand on that a bit. It's a real, for those watching that aren't in the medical fraternity per se, it's a real hot potato subject. Nobody really wants to talk about this. It's the elephant in the room. And you alluded to it earlier, Mishka, when you said that there's a culture that, well, if I've been through it, you will have to go through it as well. Nothing much is going to change. So what's the point of even talking about it? And I had a lot of resistance initially when I started, because people tell me that. I mean, what do you hope to achieve from this? We all know that it's there. We know that it's wrong, but nothing's going to change. And there was a sense that people were afraid to come forward because of jeopardizing future kind of career aspirations. You don't want to be seen as a black sheep. And that was very challenging initially to get around. And despite me getting 60 plus stories, I had to, I wouldn't say settle, but the people that I did eventually get on camera was few and far between. Some people were more than happy to have private conversations and give me kind of support behind closed doors. But anything further than that, they were very hesitant because of the fear of their own career and jeopardization of career aspirations. So I would say that was quite challenging. And then along a similar kind of thought was then to have conversation with the people whom where we filmed. Because obviously we filmed in a hospital, as you'll see in the film, which I won't name. That was our agreement. But it was quite challenging initially to find hospitals that would bite. Because if you come with a mandate again that you're doing a documentary investigative documentary on bullying and harassment in the field, that doesn't, people are already on the defensive. And thankfully, I'm very grateful, and it's a pity I can't name them because of our agreement, but I'm very happy for the hospital that did eventually allow us in and allowed us to film some of their staff members, because they were thoroughly on board with the idea. But it took a long time to get there, long time to convince them, a lot of back and forth and promise to them of the tone of the documentary, which I will keep mentioning, that it's measured, it's not inflammatory, you're not going to mention any names. So it took a lot of coaxing. And I had to find a way to live within a good middle where I'm still supportive and acknowledge people suffering, but not too extreme on either side where you seem to be sitting on either side. So yes, somewhat of a fence sitter in some respects, but I mean, at the same time, acknowledge the fact that I started this because I have these experiences, right? And my allegiances ultimately lie with the victims in the story in any case. So yeah, challenging, but I think so far it's been such a rewarding and enriching experience, especially the past month when I've started to promote it and speak to people like yourself and gotten feedback for those that have watched it pre-release, all overwhelmingly positive. So I'm hopeful that it will be received in the general public in the positive kind of enlightened manner in which it was produced, intended to be produced.
Thanks for that. I think I can only imagine the struggles that you had to go through, because I can remember times where you're sitting around a table with doctors, and if you are the one complaining about a system that everybody is working in, you become the unpopular person in the group, the person that everybody kind of stays away from because that person is going to cause trouble.
Yeah.
Whether you can get the feeling that some people may agree with you, but it's the unfavorable thing to go against the status quo, basically.
Yeah,
Um,
and I don't have to tell you, when you're an intern, you're reliant on your logbook to be signed off. But again, for the benefit of those that are not medical watching in, if you disrupt the boat too much, you always have at the back of your mind that you won't be signed off for your internship, and it's a real fear
exactly.
for people.
Exactly. And I think that even extends onto registrarship
Yeah,
because unfortunately, our field and more towards the end of finishing your studies and going further is very subjective. Um, and I'm sure that people try not to be, but there are cases where it is subjective. And if you are the one complaining about calls and working conditions, which you have the right to do, there are
and heaven
laws.
forbid mental health.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And again, we are meant to be advocating for mental
mm,
health for our patients, but
yeah,
so many, and I'm sure you know in your circles as well,
yeah,
of doctors or allied health, anyone in the medical field are on antidepressants,
mm,
on something to help them with the anxiety of just coping at work
mm,
for nothing else than just coping.
yeah,
And that is extremely shocking, I think.
yeah,
So, yeah, I, I also don't know who the people were at the hospital, which hospital you were filming at, but I think I just want to take this opportunity to also say thank you to them because it is something that we needed, and I think we all appreciate it. And those watching, especially those not in the medical field, it really does add to your documentary. It would not work if it wasn't taken in a hospital.
sure,
It's beautifully filmed, and I love how the integrity of each of the people talking is kept intact.
yeah,
As you said, it's not meant to be an inflammatory documentary. And you have really managed to do that while still trying to kind of get us thinking, get the conversation going, is what I get the feel is what you are trying to achieve with this. So we talked about the topics that you chose.
yeah.
Is there, I mean, we have kind of elaborated now on it, but did you have personal experiences in those specific topics, or is it what you found more prevalent? Why those things specifically? Because you could argue that there are so many other things in the medical field,
Yeah.
talking COVID, what about PPE, all of that kind of things.
Yeah.
Why did you choose those topics?
Um, I chose those topics because they were, yeah, I mean, they were the most prevalent at my time. And obviously, I started before COVID, and there's probably a number of other topics that I could have chosen or included as well, but they were the most prevalent. In fact, when I started it, I had a primary focus on bullying. That was my focus, and it it arose from my thoughts and my experiences with microaggressions in the workplace, where, and we make this point in the film, where bullying is seen like a gray zone. No, you can't really define it well. What is it exactly? Even in terms of labor law, it's not really well defined. Harassment, discrimination, on the other hand, it's clear cut, kind of obvious, usually linked to a specific characteristic of a person like gender, disability, race. But this bullying can be very, very subtle. And through my formative years and through my training, I experienced it on a personal level, microaggressions, and sometimes overt, but most of the time, as I mentioned, subtle. And these, again, were the stories that were shared with me too. You hear of a ward round where huffing and puffing consultant throws your notes on the floor and says, no, you incompetent. And, what kind of bullshit is that, man? We're all adults here. You can't treat me like a child. If you're unhappy with a way that I work, there's a professional manner and demeanor in which you address it. Then we shouldn't stand for it. Other professions don't stand for it. Other professions have overarching strong HR structures that you can make independent independent cases to, for grievance procedures to be followed. We don't have that, many of the hospitals at least. And it was bullshit, to be honest. And so it was from those kind of experiences and anger, frankly, that I started formulating it. And my anger dissipated, as I mentioned, because you have to be mature about it and you have to think kind of strategically how you want to have the conversation. You can't have an angry conversation if you anticipate change, if you want change. But yeah, it came from those personal experiences.
I'm sorry that you had to go through those experiences. And I think that if we can look at it in the way that with your experiences, you have managed to bring something good out of it, not taking away from the damage that it has probably done to your mental well-being, you practicing as a doctor, all of that. But I think it's that story that you shared of the consultant. I'm sure that most medical professionals immediately picture themselves in that position and remember a consultant who did that to them too.
Yeah.
Myself, I have personally been victimized in, not overtly, but I definitely agree the bullying, the subtle aggression is definitely there. And what is sad is that it almost becomes a culture where if you don't have that microaggression or raise your voice when you talk or don't say please or thank you, it's almost showing that you're a bit assertive. You know what you're doing.
Yeah.
The boss to work in. And we spend most of our time at work, especially medical professionals. We spend a lot of our vulnerable time at work when we haven't eaten, when we haven't slept, when we haven't used the bathroom, haven't seen our families.
Yeah.
And then we are met with toxic people the next morning on a ward round. It makes it very difficult. And I think we all know of people who are even leaving the medical profession or people who have immigrated. And I don't know how medical professions or fields are overseas, but I do get the feel that this is not an exclusively South African problem.
No.
I think we have a lot more pressure and strain in this country because of resources, but the general hierarchy, bullying, excessive working hours, it's there everywhere.
Yeah.
So, your documentary is not only relevant to us over here, it's global. And I really do hope that it goes global and that people get to see, because when your doctor comes to your bed, you see them for 5 minutes and you don't know what they do for the rest of the day, and you don't know if they've even had an hour of sleep. And that changes your doctor-patient relationship. It changes a lot. So
I just wanted to pick up on one thing that you said before you move on, and
yes,
and that was this concept that you have to be assertive or seen to be assertive to be successful in medicine. It's one of the main arguments against kind of what this documentary stands for, which is to recognize doctors as holistic human beings and care for them. But it's a fallacy. It's a complete fallacy that you have to be a tough nut to be a doctor, because we're not making wilting roses. One consultant told me once, you have to be strong and you have to be hard and you have to be jacked and you have to work in this. Yeah, you have to work at a high pace, and you can't think about these girly things like emotions, and you have to be assertive and aggressive at all times. But I challenge that. With a very simple notion. Where's your evidence? Where's your evidence that working in a toxic, high-paced, dysfunctional environment produces the best outcomes, whatever outcomes they may be? patient care, service delivery, waiting times. That's let alone all of the other issues that we're actually talking about here, which is holistic doctor-patient relationship. I'm talking about actual real outcomes that those people worry about. Where's your evidence? I suggest, and I know from the literature that I've seen and academics that I've spoken with, is that there's an overwhelmingly majority of evidence that operating in a nurturing, supportive environment produces far better results. And that's true for medicine, it's true for being a pilot, it's true for being a lawyer, it's true for being in any profession. That empathy and kindness and support goes a long way. And that old notion that we need to learn by the stick, I mean, come on, man, that's so outdated. So challenge it, and challenge it on facts. Tell them to produce the evidence. That if you're a surgeon, you have to be hard and you have to be shouted at and humiliated. Otherwise, you won't be a surgeon. That's bullshit.
I'm so glad that you brought in the evidence point of view, because medicine is it's a clinical field and we base everything on evidence. So if we are treating each other in a poor way, to kind of strive, or in the aim of pushing somebody to reach further, it's shocking that people are saying this works, and actually it's not evidence-based at all. Yeah. I think that there have been studies that actually show that people respond better when responding to pleasure rewards as opposed to pain as being a motivator.
Yeah.
So I definitely agree with your sentiments there. So a last few things that I just want to ask you about. If you had to sum up in a sentence, what would you like to achieve with this documentary?
Dialogue, conversation. That was always the point of this. I know I'm not naive. I mean, one documentary is not the golden bullet, that's going to change the whole system. But I had always envisioned it to start the conversation. Platforms like this, with the medical schools, with the general public, media, to start that conversation. And the conversation has to be centered around how a toxic workplace results of bullying, harassment, discrimination can result in a healthcare worker that feels that's dysfunctional because they may have issues of burnout and mental health problems. That then leads to issues that affect the health system, because you have issues of absenteeism, presenteeism, which means you're at work but you're not really at work. People leaving the health profession altogether, or they immigrate to Australia or something, and then ultimately leading to poor healthcare service delivery, because now you've got increased waiting times, may lead to things like medical errors, just dissatisfaction with the service overall, and ultimately patients that use the health service, especially the public health system, are the ones that suffer. And that's the link that we draw from, and that is why it's important that if you've got these social causes in the workplace, these systemic social issues in the workplace, how it can actually overall lead to adverse patient outcome. That's the message we leave in the documentary, or I hope that's left in the documentary. So conversation about that in the medical profession, definitely, and that's almost a given, but I'm hoping for a broader national and even global conversation, because as you mentioned, this message is universal.
Thanks. And I definitely think that is what your documentary has achieved. That's what I was thinking about, and I'm sure others will be doing the same. I think a conversation is the easiest thing to do, as opposed to starting a movement or bringing about change. Once we have that conversation and candid conversations with anybody, doesn't have to be somebody in the medical space, I think mindsets start to shift, and archaic systems that may have been working in the past can change. The other thing I wanted to ask you is something I found rather interesting is that at the end of your documentary, we were speaking about this earlier, that you're going to have a live Q&A session.
Yeah.
I think that's an incredible idea. Tell us a bit about that and who are the doctors that are going to be on the panel? I know you have a very, very exciting panel there.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it. It's happening after the premiere next week, Wednesday. And the idea was to unpack the documentary, provide a platform for anybody that watches the documentary to give comments, criticism, concerns, anything. We will transition from the documentary per se to the issues, ultimately to solutions. That's the kind of the gist of the agenda. The panel is very exciting. It consists of Dr. Tlaleng Mofokeng, Dr. T. I'm sure many people know her. She's a celebrity in the medical world, and she's in fact one of the participants in the film as well. So very excited to hear her views, especially around women's health and gender discrimination in the workplace, which is a keen interest of hers. Other panelist is Dr. Antoinette Mirich. She is the psychiatrist, but she's also the co-founder and coordinator of the Health Worker Care Network. It's a very interesting initiative that was developed in COVID to support all healthcare workers around the country with psychological support remotely, free of charge, absolutely free of charge. And we feature them in the documentary. The contact details are within the documentary. And it's such a fantastic initiative, and I think that she has a lot of value to bring to the conversation, especially around mental health aspects. Then we also feature, I just got news today, I'm very excited, Prof. Nkosa Gloza from UKZN, she's the Dean of Medicine there. Fantastic champion of the rights of junior doctors, and they've started in this month internship mentorship program. Fantastic concept to support junior doctors through their academics, but also some of those holistic issues that we were speaking about, ranging from how to manage your finances, to psychological support, to accessing top-level academics for mentorship. It's a fantastic initiative, and she'll really be focusing on what we can do rather than the issues per se. But a wealth of experience in the field, always been a champion of youth rights. So really looking forward to it. And then myself, obviously, as the producer, I'll be the host and answering questions about the documentary itself too. So yes, please do join.
Perfect. I am so excited. I think that panel alone, I can just imagine the discussions that are going to be had and the wealth of knowledge that we will all gain from it. And I love how you've kind of taking us on a journey of this is what it's like, these are what doctors are going through, and then solutions, as you said.
Yeah.
So Adil, before you go, can you please share all the details so that we can get everybody registering and get the word out there?
The easiest would be to go to our website. I'm sure you'll drop it on your social, but it's www.btfdocumentary.com. All one word, BTF as in behind the front line, documentary.com. And on the website, there's a link to register, and I'll send you a link to view as well as a link to the Q&A. You can view the trailer. You can meet some of the participants of the film beforehand, and as well as just to see some of our press releases and media involvement in the course running up to the release. Yeah, otherwise you can pop me a mail and I can answer anything else on that, and you can reach out on our Facebook page as well. The link is on the website too.
Perfect. And then are you guys on any other social media, or are you just focusing on Facebook and your website at the moment?
Facebook and website at the moment, yes.
Perfect. And I know that you guys have been busy on the PR section or side of things. So there are some of your interviews online as well. Could you maybe tell us about that quickly, where we can go and have a look?
Yes, it's online as well. There was a feature in Cape Talk, as well as the August Times Live. There's a few coming up as well. ENCA is going to do a feature soon. Last week, Sunday, there was a feature on Newsroom Africa, which I've also put online. The Sunday Times is doing one this weekend, a massive 2,000-word expose. The documentary is a small part of it. I'm really looking forward to it, actually. It's an expose of the issues facing junior doctors in general in the country. So I'll pop that on the website as soon as it comes out too. Yeah, there's so much happening, but very exciting. Only 7 days left, next week Wednesday. So please do register if you haven't registered yet. And then just a final note in terms of the PR, if you don't make it for the 6 p.m. official release, it will be available on YouTube thereafter. It's just that it's a premiere at 6 p.m. and thereafter you can watch it in your own time as well. I know that's the question that keeps coming up.
Incredible traction that you guys are getting. I'm so happy for that, because really this documentary deserves it. Thank you for being brave and bold and taking the step that many are a little bit intimidated of taking. And I really do hope that we can start some change with this. I know you've put a lot of work into it. You can see from the documentary, it's really a brilliant one. And once again, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for talking to everybody. And I'm really looking forward to this documentary next week.
Before I go, I just have to also give a shout out to you. Thanks for the opportunity. You've been a star. You're part of my PR team, I hope I can say. So fantastic. Thanks for all the help that you've given. But also really a big shout out to everybody else that's been giving guidance, support. I mean, I'm an amateur documentarian, filmmaker. I've partnered with incredible people that gave of their time and of their services free of charge. I'm forever in their debt. And then most importantly, to the participants of the film, which were actually the stars of the show. Really, any opportunity I get to thank them, because I'm humbled by their participation, and I look forward to doing future projects. So you or anybody watching that wants to get involved with future projects centered around social justice or public health, please reach out. I'm looking to collaborate for the next thing.
Perfect. I'm so sure that you're going to get the mails pouring in. But yeah, I look forward to it, and I hope you have a wonderful Heritage Day, as well as everybody else out there. Keep safe, everybody, and keep talking and keep going with this discussion. Thank you so much. We'll speak to you all soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks.